So we'll go ahead and get started. Again, welcome. This is what is this? This is June. Oh my goodness. Um, that's crazy. Let's see. I kind of missed May, I think so. But anyway, welcome to the June Native American Language Program Talking Circle with the Office of Indian Education. Before we get started, we'll go ahead and play the disclaimer.
This presentation was produced under U.S. Department of Education contract number GS00F115CA with Synergy Enterprises, Inc. The views expressed herein do not necessarily represent the positions or policies of the U.S. Department of Education. No official endorsement by the U.S. Department of Education of any product, commodity, service, or enterprise mentioned herein is intended or should be inferred.
Okay. Now that we've been disclaimed, let's get to what we're going to be talking about today during our talking circle. We're going to do a little bit of announcements and reminders. Maybe we're also going to do some reflection as it relates to the project director meeting that we held in May, and then talk about some culture based education and how it relates to native language acquisition and programs. And then we're going to be, at the end, we're just going to wrap up with looking at some upcoming events. Let's see. Oh, I think she had another meeting to go to, but your interim NAL program officer is Dr. Donna Sabas Burns. She was on, but she did have another meeting to go to, so we want to thank her for all of her hard work with the NAL grants, as well as with the larger OIE. I am Olani Lilly. I am the OIE Technical Assistance Team member that gets to work with you and set up our talking circle meetings for the NULL grant. So here's just an announcement, and what's actually an important announcement is that the Native American Language uh, 2022 grant competition is out there. You can see the first bullet is the notice inviting applicants. If you go ahead and click on that link, oops, sorry, where did I go? Go ahead and click on that link. You can access the notice inviting applications. Also, we are going to be scheduling two pre-application meetings, one on June 21st and the other on June 29th. So you want to go ahead and register for that. The notice of intent to apply is due July 5th. So if you are interested in applying for that grant, or you know of maybe another program that might be interested, you might want to make sure you put that date on your calendar. Applications are due by August 2nd, 2022. Excuse me. And then if you want more information, you could go ahead and click on the link below. And let me go ahead and see if I can put that in the chat for you. One second. Since it's just few of us, I can take a moment to put this in the chat. There you go. And then I will also, let's copy and put the notice inviting applications in the chat as well. If you want to share this information, we did post it on the OIE Twitter account, so you can access it there. You can retweet it to any of your friends on Twitter, or you can go ahead and share this link. Okay. So, if you do have a null grant, what we want to do is take a little moment to reassess your budget. And so, if you answer yes to any of these questions, either of these first two questions, have you drawn down at least 60% of your grant funds? Hoping that that's the case. If you had a carryover and have exhausted those funds, again, hoping that's the case. So if you have a carryover from last year, making sure that you've exhausted all those funds and are now way into expending your funds for this actual grant year. If you have any of those things and you're anticipating a carryover, do you plan to be expending all your money by September 30th, 2022. So this is a great time to take stock of where you are regarding your budget and your budget expenditures, and also to look and check your drawdowns. Maybe you, on your records, have expended the funds, but maybe your fiscal office hasn't drawn down all the funds. It's a good time to check to make sure that those two numbers match up. If not, you want, and you don't, and you think you are going to have a large amount that is not being expended, you really want to reassess your budget and take time to do that now, because you can always submit a budget revision to move those funds around to make sure that they are expended appropriately and that you are expending all your funds. Um, or you want to maybe start to have discussion with your program officer, Dr. Donna Sabas Burns, regarding a large carryover and plans for it. Either way, you want to make sure that you're reaching out and communicating with your program officer, or if you have any questions, contacting your OIETA team, and we can help assess and look at your budget. And maybe sometimes it's great to have a thought partner in thinking about ways in order to expend down all your funds. Particularly, after reviewing the APRs, I know COVID has been a barrier to expending all the funds. And so we fortunately get to look across all of the programs and see all the amazing things happen. And we might be able to throw some ideas out that other program people are doing in order to help maybe think of ideas to expend down your funds. So again, you just want to take this time now to really just see where you are budget wise, and see if you need to do a budget revision or have a communication with your program officer. All right, so we're going to get into the you talking part of this talking circle. And just a reminder that the talking circles are really a time for NAL grantees and other language programs to have conversations around our collective success. So, sharing challenges, but also sharing solutions, things that worked, and maybe things that didn't work. Warning maybe giving a heads up to peers about maybe something that didn't work, but also some strategies that are working. Everyone's voice is valuable, and so even if you are maybe you don't feel like you're like the best program, you want to do a lot of improvement. Learning from each other is really helpful, and everybody's voice is valuable. Also, we really want to create a safe place for these talking circles where you feel comfortable in sharing your challenges and maybe some of the things that weren't so successful. Because again, when we share those things, we all learn and grow, and we don't have to recreate the wheel. Excuse me. So, just to sort of give you a little bit of the landscape of OIE and all the discretionary grant programs, we have had a couple new awards or I guess grant competitions completed and out. Um, right now, we have the demonstration grants for Indian children. We have both the Native Youth Community projects that are winding up with both their fiscal year 17 and 18, as well as the Accessing Choices in Education ACE grant that was out in uh, fiscal year 2020. And then we have us, the NAL American Language Program for fiscal year 20. And then as I shared before, we have the new grant competition coming out for 2022. We also have the Indian Education Professional Development Program. Those are going to 3 years. The fiscal year 17 is right now there are some grantees that are in a no cost extension contract, and so that's from fiscal year 2017, as well as two other grant years around of 18 and 21. And then we have the State Tribal Educational Partnership, which is STEP, which again was the same year as the NAL American Language Grant. That was the fiscal year 2020. And then just recently, we have the American Rescue Plan, um, American Indian Resiliency in Education. We call it ARP-AIR, that just came out in 2021. And then the NYCP will be have a new group joining us soon once all of those applications are reviewed and award notices have gone out. So we'll have a new group. And then, of course, once the NAL 2022 grant competition, we'll have a new group of NAL grantees as well. So those are the discretionary grants currently in play within the Office of Education, Indian Education. Okay, where? There we go. And so, what are the common grant roles in, across the Office of Indian Education grantees? One of the more sort of like engaged and important positions that OIE reaches out to is what we call the project director position or role. Now, your organization might call the position uh, a director or a program officer, um, but at the Office of Indian Education, we ask you to identify a project director. And that role really is a role that is official and it's a required role. It is listed on the GAN and it is a primary point of contact for the grant. Excuse me. Um, the other important position or role is the authorized representative. Now, that's an official and a required role as well. And it is a key role in that is the person who signs the APR. And so you really want to make sure that you have that role as well as the project director role. Whoever is in that position is up to date and that the Office of Indian Education has the correct content person and person in that role, as well as your G5 reflects the appropriate and appointed project director and as well as the authorized representative. Now, that may, for your organization, that may be the same person or it may be two different people. Sometimes it's the project director is one person and then the executive director or the head of the tribe, the president of the tribe might be the authorized representative or even maybe a fiscal person. Also, another role that we see in OIE is the evaluator. That's not a required role, but many grantees go ahead and either through contract or maybe in-house create an evaluator role. And that role really looks at like program evaluation. They may help with putting together the APR, development of assessment, or creating ongoing evaluation systems within the organization. That may include the OIE, but also may include other grants and other program elements as well. And then you have your program or project coordinator. That's again not a required role, but many of you have that. That may be also the project director, but you might call this person, call them by this name within your organization. And then, of course, your fiscal staff. This is a person who is responsible for drawdowns in G5, and so they need to you need to make sure that they have access to G5 and they are represented in that role. That's critical because that's how you are drawing down your funds for the activities that you are uh, conducting. So I want to go ahead and take a brief pause here and ask, like, what role are you in on your grant? What role do you represent? And maybe it might be multiple roles. You can either, since it's just a few of us, you can go ahead and come off of mute or go ahead and or you can put it in the chat. What role are you playing on your grant? And as you put that in, I'm going to take a sip of water. Go ahead. Okay. Project director. Awesome. Thank you. Armand, are you with a particular grantee with no? Oh, there we go. Authorized representative. Thank you. Okay. G5 is actually the system within the U.S. Department of Education that you upload. It provides sort of all your core information from the Office of Education regarding your grant. You usually have someone designated, definitely your project director, as well as a fiscal person who has access to that system where they can access your APR, your annual performance report, as well as have the ability for your fiscal person to draw down funds related to the grant.
And Alani, since it is a small group,
Yeah,
if we have just a second, I can screen share what G5 looks like right quick.
sure. That'd be great. Thanks.
Yeah. Um,
I'll stop sharing and let
yeah.
you. Oh,
So
yeah.
this is the illustrious G5. It is a government website. It's used by more than just the Department of Education. It's used by a number of different departments as well as for different grants throughout the Department of Ed. But basically, it's the system that you log into once you are awarded a grant to manage that grant. And so you, as the authorized representative, should have access to this website. As the authorized representative, you're going to basically be able to see everything. You won't be able to complete annual performance reporting. Only the project director of record can do that. And you won't be able to draw down any funds. Only your designated fiscal person can do that. But you should be able to see all of those different things. If you don't have access to G5, or if you do and you just kind of would like a little assistance in figuring out where stuff is and how you can access different things in there, you can always let us know. And we're happy to schedule time to kind of do a walkthrough of G5. We do that with lots of different grantees because it has lots of parts and pieces and is not typically the most user-friendly system. But once you get used to it, you can find all the different things you need. In particular, a lot of times authorized representatives tend to be looking for that fiscal information or for the GAN, the grant award notification. Those are two things that a lot of times we'll see the authorized rep kind of trying to find in that G5 system.
Awesome. Thanks, Sarah. Okay, let's see. Am I sharing my screen? There we go. And Armand, since we're a small group, would you mind maybe putting in the chat or coming off of mute to share which organization you are with? I'll check that. Move forward. Um, and so, as you're putting that in the chat, we just this is a time to just sort of review the project directors meeting. We do have some data related to that. That was held. Oh, thank you. Thanks, Armand. um, that was held on May 10th through the 12th. There were a total of 297 attendees, three strands. So most of all of the breakout groups were organized around these three strands. We have, excuse me, 74.5 total hours of content. So 41 live sessions. We had three keynote speakers, 24 breakouts, 12 networking sessions, one focus group, and one closing session. And as we also provided some pre conference on demand sessions that you were able to access as well. So, just a lot of content. Here are some of the top rated sessions. And interesting enough for us, one of the top rated sessions was the language nest. We had our grantee, the Oneida Nation, share about their preschool native language immersion program. And so that was one of the top 10 rated sessions. Also, appropriately enough, Mental health was high on the list as well that session. And then we had some quick connections. Those were just connecting people and um, sorry, uh, getting familiar with different types of programs and grants out there. Again, another one was around secondary traumatic stress and self care. You know, with the pandemic, we've seen a lot of interest as well as need for both mental health and dealing with stress and self care. We also provided program peaks. One of the higher rated ones was around secondary students. Another really great session was around storytelling during COVID, and it provided a lot of really great resources. And then Native Education Collaborative Circles of Reflection, and then another program peak around blending academics and culture. So here were our top rated sessions. Now, you can go ahead and continue to, if you registered for the PD meeting, you can go ahead and continue to access the sessions for an entire year. And so you can always, maybe there wasn't a session you were able to attend, you can go in and check. In particular, the storytelling one, you might want to check out that uh, session. In the materials for the actual session, you can go ahead and access the books for free and you can print them out. And so they did provide access to those materials. So that was a really great one. Those are actually native based stories created for native communities related to COVID and mental health. So you might want to go ahead and check that out. And so here were all of the breakout sessions that were provided. I went ahead and highlighted some of them that I thought, you know, we've sort of touched bases on in various talking circles. Um, One of them was battling online learning fatigue. I know as we were in COVID, there was a lot of switching to online and remaining online and doing really hybrid. And so this session gave a lot of different tools and online tools and strategies to continue to engage students and families and communities online learning. Also, we had a really great session on culture based learning. What was interesting about that session, we actually shared a rubric on, you know, sort of like being able to look across your organization and see where you are as far as being a culture based learning program. But one of the key aspects of the culture based learning was language. And so there's a rubric that you can look at um, and again, it's still in the system that you can access to sort of see where your organization is at regarding the level of language. Also, culturally responsive education, evidence based, that again had information around language as being an integral part of being a culturally responsive education program. And then again, like I shared, the storytelling was really helpful on that session. And then looking at data as it relates to every Native American student counts, I highlighted that because that really provided a lot of good resources as you go ahead and look at maybe writing other grants or developing need statements. It has a lot of really strong resources. And then again, when we're going to spend a little time in looking at some of the content we went over as in the language nest, as far as like key elements you want to have in a language program. Um, excuse me. The indigenous approach to logic models and program evaluation was an interesting session. Again, I picked that out because I know for a lot of language programs, we're trying to look at different ways to articulate and to show and highlight uh, the the indigenousness of our programs and finding more appropriate ways to communicate what you are actually doing, in particular with language. And then again, native mental health seems to be definitely a need within community, and so You might want to also check out that session. Okay, let's move. Uh, Sorry. So again, we're in a smaller group, and I don't know if everyone got to attend, but if you did get to attend any of the sessions, what idea or strategy or session stood out for you? I guess that's the first question I want to open up. Was there a particular thing you walked away from the project directors meeting, if you attended, that sort of really stuck in your head? You can come off of mute or put it in the chat.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Hi.
Hi.
Okay. I'll throw something out there.
Awesome. Thanks.
I did attend quite a few really good sessions. I was just trying to remember. Um, I thought the keynote speaker, Dr. Redcorn, his keynote, and then I also attended his session about educational sovereignty and capacity building within communities, like reaching out and seeing who's in your community, who's in your circles. And I really appreciated that because I'm pretty fortunate where I work and where I live because we have a lot of tribal entities.
Mm-hmm.
And I think our community has been very strong. First tribal college in the state many years ago and a tribal K-12, but we kind of all work in silos.
Yeah.
So listening to him, it kind of it gave me some hope and it inspired me to rethink like how we can collaborate with our partners because everybody has really unique skill sets and they bring different areas of expertise to our community. So I feel like that's something really important that the language immersion work is really challenging and rewarding and it's easy to just, as we've seen over the years, to just kind of focus on ourselves and our needs and our families and not really reaching out for help or um, just ways to collaborate with other entities. So that was really what I took home from those sessions and how we can rebuild and reconnect here in our community.
Yeah, that's awesome. I yeah, I left that. I didn't get to sit in this session because I was in another session, but the keynote speech was really strong, and he really like made you think about that, right? And think about how you could do that in your community.
Well, and I'll chime in because I was lucky because I was his helper. So I got to go to both sessions just like you did. And yeah, the second one was really great. I thought because he actually had the time where we could work on things and start thinking about how to use all the stuff he talked about in his keynote. So if you hop back in and watch the recording, Alani, know the second one is hands-on.
Okay, I'm yeah. I've actually been like when I've been doing work, I've been actually playing them sort of like in the background. Sometimes I listen to music, but I've been playing those just to sort of get. I didn't get to get in any of the other sessions, so it's a great time to sort of just listen in as I'm doing other things. Awesome. So, I mean, the other thing is that, we're always, as we prepare for putting together sessions for the project directors meeting, a lot of times we reflect back on the year, and in particular, we reflect on, the talking circles and topics that you folks sound interest or seem interested in, or, some maybe as we look across all of whether it's, the technical assistance, the coaching sessions, sort of issues that sort of pop up across grantees. And that really drives the content of the actual project directors meeting. I was wondering, since it's been relatively recent, if there were topics you thought like, hey, I'd like to either maybe dive into this more, or this was not even covered, and I'd like to sort of see a session maybe next year that would, address this issue. Was there anything you thought was missing that you wanted to see maybe next year? Yeah, and I am taking notes.
Hello, everyone. I apologize because I've had a few computer issues with the camera and everything. Unfortunately, I'm a newer addition to the foundation that I've joined, so I unfortunately haven't attended the sessions.
Yeah.
Um, is there a way that I would find out when those sessions, the next upcoming sessions, would take place so that I could participate? And are there any postings of the old sessions that I could possibly review?
Yes. So right now, it would be accessing through the actual Pathable site. We are in the process of uploading all of the, downloading the sessions and then uploading them to the OIE YouTube site. And so those will be more accessible. But Sarah, do you know, I mean, maybe through your project director would probably be one way to access this Pathable site?
Yeah. So two different ways you can get to the Pathwell site. So I put the direct link there. Um, your project director will have a login. We still have a couple of logins though. So I know you were going to email regarding G5 too. So if you just include in there that you'd like access to the PD meeting, we can get you signed up.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very
Yeah.
much.
Um, Lisa, was there anything you thought was missing this year that, or an issue you thought wasn't covered that you'd like to see covered next year?
Me,
Um,
Uh-huh.
I I was trying to think of. I really can't think of anything. It sounded like there were sessions that I was going to say mental health and wellness. But it sounds like there were sessions, and I must have missed those. I must have been in other sessions,
Yeah.
so I can go back and check those out.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm gonna just put a plug in that I think you would like that mental health transfer center session,
Okay.
just because they have a ton of resources that I think would work with some of the things that y'all do.
Okay. Thanks.
Armand, were you going to say something?
no, I was confused who was
Okay.
being spoken, so I
Okay.
apologize.
No, no problem. Alrighty. So let's move on. I keep losing my cursor. Where are you? Here you are. Okay. All right. So one of the things when we were in the language nest that they shared, as well as within the culture base, when we looked at that culture based rubric, one of the things we looked at the what are the key elements of a native language program, and these sort of kept coming up. One of them was around really a language learning environment, whether it's within a classroom, depending on like your program. We have programs that are immersion all the way to maybe they infuse language into the culture-based activities, and so but all of them were were sort of making sure that the learning environment was sort of like language rich, whether it was books or posters around the classroom. Some programs have signage throughout the school that is in the native language. Some immersion programs are where is a place where the native language is spoken throughout the school environment or program environment. We do have some of our now grantees who are a program within a school, and so they actually provide language programs within the larger context of an English speaking school. And so within some teachers come in out into classrooms and leave classrooms. They sort of team teach with English speaking, and so they bring in their language environment and all the tools they need to create, and then they take that out as well. And so one again, the key pieces is that whether it's temporary or permanent, is creating a environment that is rich in language. The other one, it was around instructional support. So this was whether you have a teacher or an instructor who's again coming in and out, or maybe doing an after school language program. one of the key elements of success is making sure that those instructors are supported, whether it is through instructional or curriculum strategies and or even the continued development of their native language skills. Another element was around family language classes. Really, the belief that uh, the more uh, environment that a student can be engaged in the language, the stronger and more deeper their use and knowledge of the language can grow. And so, one of the key pieces is around teaching, bringing families along in their language growth in order to create an environment at home where the native language is used. And so again, that's another key element. Another one we saw was around elder engagement or practitioner, so cultural practitioner engagement. A lot of the language programs are engaging elders, maybe where who are holders of the language, and they engage. Our programs engage them in all sorts of different ways, from them coming into the classroom and speaking the language, to actually being curriculum developers, to being sort of the dictionaries, the resource people, in order to make sure that the language is being taught appropriately and that the cultural practices are engaged appropriately as well. So that's another really key element of a native language program. And of course, you can't forget the curriculum and instruction, right? And so, the a lot of time spent on developing curriculum as well as the instructional strategies to go along with the language. And that again is everywhere from, you know, NAL grantees as well as other grantees from other discretionary grants provide language programs from anywhere from after school program to actual full on immersion language programs. And the different curriculum and instructional strategies that are needed for those broad range of native language delivery programs. And then, of course, assessment. You know, particularly if we go back to GEPRA, for the NAL grantees, where we're looking at proficiency and progress. One of the things is how are you uh, defining progress and proficiency? And then once you've defined it, how are you assessing that? And I know a lot of programs actually go beyond sort of the GEPRA, but that's a sort of baseline where you want to start around like what is progress and what is proficiency. So those are some of the elements that we see that lend to successful native language programs. And so I want to go ahead and I'm going to pop up a poll here. Let's see. And we want to just ask you, let me launch that. As it relates, oh, oh, okay, it's already, is that shared? Can you folks see the poll? Okay. So as it relates to these different elements, where do you think is um, your strength, your most strongest uh, place where, you know, for your program? And this one, I'm going to sort of force you to choose a single choice. I know some of you might be able to choose multiple of these, but I really want you to hone in on where is your strength um, as it relates to these elements. And you can go ahead and take that poll, or you can just come off of mute since it's just us and share. Awesome. So really a language learning environment. Yeah. Great. And so could you, Lisa, I'm guessing that's you. And so could you share what are some of the things that you do well as it relates to creating a language learning environment?
Sure. We have K through 8, and it's immersion. So we have very specific um, groupings of grades. We have mixed grades. Obviously, we have a K, a 1, 2, a 3, 4. and our middle school is separate. And everything that's created, the visuals, they're very, age specific. So you go into the kindergarten room and, when you walk in that it's designed for young children. And it's very much word, letter, you see the beginnings of the Ojibwe phonics learning system in the room. Everything is all in Ojibwe. We have, we try to we put labels on everything with the younger learners.
Nice.
And then it just gradually becomes more, middle elementary, you see more anchor charts and more teaching visual aids in those classrooms. But and then middle school, of course, is very rich and very detailed. Like you see paragraphs, even, and there are charts on their walls. But it's very, the teachers are very proficient, and we do not have elders in our classrooms, but we did at one time have extra support, not just for the students and for the teacher to be modeling, I guess, with the elders and conversing with them, but also the elders were, for me especially too, like they help us as teachers. Like you think of yourself as like a gymnast and you're doing a triple backflip. I can't remember what they're called. My daughter used to do gymnastics, but it made me think, like, sometimes I get stuck on a phrase or a word or a certain conjugation, and they're right there to like help you, right on the spot training. So so that's what I guess when I say our language learning environment, what it looks like is we have all these people who are, engaged and using the language all the time. And then there are specific, strategies built in for the kids who just need to use English. Like we have some really funny ones in the older grades with, like, the only time you can interrupt me in English is if, Justin Bieber walks into the room, or something that the kids will catch their attention and they'll realize, oh yeah, I guess if I can't remember how to ask for something or a word, that there's always a lifeline that I can a way to ask, to use that. So, but it's, really Ojibwe centric in every classroom.
I love that strategy about Justin Bieber. I think that's great. That's a great. I've never heard that before. That's awesome.
Well, it just has, and with younger kids, we talk about, like, when I taught preschool, I had a student who just would not engage until I started talking about Thomas the Tank Engine and like what colors. And then he was like so engaged. He was like, oh my gosh, Thomas, and and like these characters. So yeah, so we have to use a little bit of pop culture and what's out there to help students realize, we know.
Yeah, you can relate, right?
Yeah, it's not all going out in the woods and looking for,
Yeah.
outside. It's also, we know what you do when you leave here and you're watching TV or you're playing video games or whatever. So we try to bridge some of that for them.
Awesome. That's great. That's great. Hey Armand, did you select the curriculum instruction one?
Yes, I did.
You want to share about, like, why you selected that one? What's going on so great? And what you're doing so well?
So we have been working on hand sign. I'm sorry if that's the right terminology for it, but Native American sign language. So my brother took ASL, American Sign Language, and so when we learned about when I heard about that, I brought it to the rest of the team, and we learned about Native American Sign Language. So my brother was part of the process of building a curriculum, a sort of a dictionary of sorts, with all the visuals and meanings behind these words and the hand signs and everything. So that was what we came up with, and that's what we've built, and along with a few other curriculum items.
Nice. Thanks for sharing.
Thank
And
you.
so, do you teach that across like multiple grade age groups or grade levels?
All the way through K through 12. We try to start it early and then take it all the way so that they can, so that the students, anybody that would want to learn it, can use it inside of adult settings, such as if there's a translation situation, like in a, large gatherings or during interviews or anything of that nature, so
Wow.
that they're fully prepared.
Yeah. That's great.
Thank you.
Thanks for sharing. Okay. All right, so let's move on to the next slide. Oh, shucks. I missed the one. There we go. So now we're gonna have I have another poll, and you can go ahead and let me launch that. This is again looking at these elements, maybe an area that you think that you want to do improvements on. Maybe you are working on them now, or maybe now that we're in summer, maybe you're looking towards the next school year. Um, but what is an area that you want to improve on? Okay, I see family language classes. Yeah. And so what why do you want to improve on your family language classes? Maybe and what are you looking at um, as it relates to your family language classes?
We used to have them. We have in the past, and I think even before the pandemic, I can't use it as an excuse really, but I think we didn't have them the year prior to the pandemic. Then obviously not during the pandemic, but I think I think part of it is having enough staff that are willing to run the family language classes. We had a pretty good setup before. We always had a meal. I think parents are more likely to come, especially if it's evening, if there's a meal involved.
Mm-hmm.
So we would try to coordinate some food, and then have different teachers to, if families bring their children, which they normally do, then we would have staff to work with children so that the parents could actually focus on
Right.
those. But like I said earlier, like I think we need to reach out more to some of the people that maybe work at the tribal college or maybe even at the K-12 schools, and see if they'd be willing to help, teach some of those. So it's not just our staff that are constantly,
Yeah.
we're pretty stretched pretty thin. So
Yeah.
that's what I would try. I'm hoping for this coming school year.
Yeah. That's great. Um, what was your when you were doing it? What was your frequency? Was it every week or
Yeah, yep. It was every week. It was the same day. It was always Wednesdays, I think, to keep it, to keep it manageable
Yeah.
week. But it was pretty good, and we had really good attendance rates from our families, and they really enjoyed that coming together too. And there was also sometimes we'd piggyback monthly. The parents committee would have like
Right.
just a quick like gather around. We're just gonna meet for a little bit here. So
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's a great tool to use for multiple multiple reasons, right?
yeah.
Um,
And you
and
can't have the excuse of, well, I need to go home and cook dinner. I need to make
yeah,
something, because it's like, well, it's already provided, so you don't need
yeah,
to bring anything. Just bring yourself.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And was it mandatory? Did you make it mandatory, or was it they could choose?
It was not mandatory, but it was, the parents were the ones who really, really wanted it. So we were lucky that we had that requested every year that when is family language? We can't wait for it. So
Yeah, yeah. Awesome. That's a great. That's I know. I think, and you already are thinking about a solution. As it relates to like reaching out to partners. So I agree. Like after teaching all day, right? What teacher and anticipating the next day,
yeah,
what teacher wants to go back in? It's really hard to find that person to go back into a classroom.
right.
Yeah. So Armand, I see in the chat you put elder engagement. You folks want to sort of work on that?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And what when you're thinking about elder engagement, what are you thinking about?
Um, Sort of reinforcing what it is that they are learning.
Mm-hmm.
I have, as a Black Seminole Native American, I have elders in my family, but we're trying to get them more involved so that they would reinforce what the students are learning.
Yeah,
So that's the
great.
focus.
Great. That's awesome. It's really again in the native language nest conversation session, it was really a key element, and they thought of some really creative ways to engage elders, both in the classroom as well as out of the classroom. On thinking about like field trips, to have like Lisa, like you said, another language person to engage in conversation as you're out in the world.
Exactly.
Yeah. So and also cultural practices. So having someone have an elder like doing a cultural practice and engaged in the language as well, really again provides that richness. So that's
That
awesome.
adds another layer to the learning process.
Yeah, yeah. Some really like active language learning in action, active and action. Awesome. Thank you guys for sharing what sort of you're going to be working on to improve. Uh, and so we're kind of wrapping up now. We just want to kind of give you a heads up that the anniversary celebration for the Office of Indian Education is coming up June 23rd. You should have received your invitation. You want to make sure that you're registering. It is a whole day event with an opening session. We are going to be sharing the student artist competition results. That's going to be really exciting, as well as the history of the Office of Indian Education. There'll be a session with some the OIE former directors panel, really reflecting on the 50 years of progress that's been made with the Office of Indian Education. Also, some student testimonial recognition, and then a closing session. So it's going to be just a day of celebration, also providing some real like history and understanding of the roots of the Office of Indian Education as it relates to sort of the larger U.S. Department of Education. Um, and so that's going to be really exciting. Want to make sure that you are registered for that. And if you know of other people in your community who you think maybe, your tribal president or your tribal council who may be interested, maybe even Lisa, like your school board, or even like partners um, that you want to sort of engage in, this might be a great celebration to invite them to. Um, uh, yeah, so just I think it's going to be really fun and exciting. So we want to make sure you get registered for that. And then I lost my cursor again. Here it is. Oh, shucks. Also, some upcoming events. So we won't be having our next talking circle will be in August 11th. And so we want to make sure that you got that on your calendar, and then back in September. And so really your school year will either be starting or getting just ready to start. So when we come back in August, and then we have office hours. Again, we have an office hour on June 30th, and office hours again, Armand, I don't know if you've been at them. They are just that. They're office hours, where if you have a question, you can come in, pop in, ask your question, and you can either stay. We have a lot of people who stay and listen to other grantee questions, or if you have your question answered, you can leave. It's not any particular agenda. It's just an opportunity for you to ask questions regarding your grants. And also, a lot of grantees just listen in to other questions. Sometimes you don't know the question you need to ask. And you hear another grantee, and you're like, oh, yeah, I never thought of that. And you hear the
That
question.
will
So,
be very helpful. Thank you very much for that.
yeah, and so that's a great session. So we have that every month. It's the fourth Thursday of each month. And so right now we're going to have the end. Let me put the end of the session poll popping up. Go ahead and give us some feedback regarding our talking circle today. We'd love to hear from you. Again, if there is any, I am currently preparing for the August talking circle, if there's anything you want to sort of um, put on as a topic to discuss with your peers, give send us an email at the OIE at SEI services. Excuse me. Excuse me. I need some. Sorry, my throat's a little dry. Um, you can send us an email, and I can make sure that we include that in the talking circle. We really want to make these talking circles relevant to you folks. And actually, in the August one, I may be reaching out to some organizations to share maybe some best practices that they're doing. We know definitely from the PD meeting that you folks, some of your best teachers are each other. And so we want to really take some time to highlight and also share learning that you folks are engaged in on an ongoing basis and learn from each other. So again, if you have any ideas that pop in your head that you're really stumped with and you want to hear from your peer grantee, please send in us an email and let us know. Here are the contact information. If you have any questions related to your specific of your grant, you can contact Dr. Donna Sabas Burns. There's her email. She's your program officer, as well as the OIE Technical Assistance Team. We do also provide individual coaching. You can sign up if you want to get orientation to, like the G5 system, or even in APR sessions, we've done, where we walk through actually loading the APR up onto G5. We can, if you're thinking about doing a budget revision, you can run that through a coaching session and ask questions, and then have that get prepared, and then submit that to your program officer. So lots of different ways and avenues to get support. If you ever have a question, don't wait until APR to put your question or your concern in. Reach out and let us know.
Alani, I wanted to just ask really quickly and I apologize if you already reviewed this, but did you put a plug in for the NAL competition by any chance?
Yes, they did. Right
Okay,
at the
perfect.
top.
Okay, good. I had technical issues. Sorry, guys. Took me 30 minutes to get into the meeting. But okay, just making sure. I just put the link in there to the how to apply page. So please spread that widely, and put in another opportunity to teach some more language. There's some good stuff out there.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, in particular, when you folks are thinking about like the areas that you want to improve on that we just discussed, this grant opportunity may be a way to build that piece out, and to think creatively about, or strengthen that within your program. So really take a look at the notice of invitation to apply, and think about the areas that you want to strengthen that we just discussed, and how you can maybe use this funding to really build up and support that piece. It's a great opportunity. And I really want to encourage you. And also, Lisa, you're talking about like partnerships and connection. Again, this NAL competition may be a great opportunity to look at, how you can bring in those partnerships and help support it with some possible funding. Um, yeah. Again, thank you, folks. Are there any questions and maybe things that we didn't cover that you want to ask?